Assalamu alaikum. The questioner is asking, Sam Harris argues that Islam, as interpreted by many adherents, is incompatible with liberal values like freedom of speech, gender equality, and secular governance. Do you agree? So the answer, the Islamic position is this is correct. We do not believe in complete freedom of speech, gender equality, or secular governance. And I'll answer these one by one. But it should be mentioned that when a Muslim agrees to go to a non-Muslim country, first of all, they shouldn't go unless they're going to spread Islam, right? Maybe they can go to do business, but they should be residing in a Muslim country. But if they do go to a non-Muslim country, they are agreeing to abide by the laws there. We're not imposing our Sharia laws on non-Muslims in their own territories, because when you go to these countries, you're agreeing to abide by those laws. And in Islam, as Allah mentions in the Quran, you should fulfill your commitments and do not break your oaths. So, if Sam Harris is saying this to stoke up fears and Islamophobia against Muslims that are already living in non-Muslim lands, then you don't have to worry about that. But anyway, so let's answer one by one here. Freedom of speech, Islam under Sharia law. All these 3 points will be answered under Sharia law, which would be established if Muslims have the power to establish it, which is usually the case when they are the majority, right, in the country, 90% or so, or whatever. There's a lot of Muslim majority countries that are 75%. We would establish Islamic law. Under Islamic law, Islamic law is the law that Allah mentions in the Quran and the Sunnah, where He tells us to implement certain things. Freedom of speech, for example, we would not allow non-Muslims to blaspheme the religion of Islam, right? We would not let them call other people towards their religions in our region, because Islam is Sharia law. Its primary purpose is to safeguard Islam as a unifying force in the region. So it would be like and no country has complete freedom of speech. In America, they censor a lot of free speech through their social media platforms, right? If you say anything that goes against their narrative, they will suspend you. In a lot of the countries, if you can't just go into a country and support ISIS, right, you'll be put on a no-fly list, and you will be put on a watch list as well. Not saying that ISIS is good, obviously, but I'm just saying, we're using an extreme example like that, we can prove that there is not really any free speech in the world in general, right? So, it's the same case under Sharia law. So we wouldn't let people blaspheme Islam, because when they start blaspheming Islam, it's like a boundary, right? It starts like that, and then they escalate it. They want to stop paying the jizya tax, and then they start working with the enemy and all that. And when you blaspheme Islam, it encourages other people to leave it, right? Leave Islam, which again is like the unifying force in the region. And then when you allow people to call people towards other religions besides Islam, again, same effect. It's like treason, right? It's like if you're living in America and you're calling people to support one of America's enemies. What America did was they sent a lot during the World War II. They sent a lot of Japanese civilians into camps, right? Concentration camps where they were held and watched. And this is what a lot of countries do, right? So, under Islamic law, the jizya tax and the land tax are the only taxes a non-Muslim has to pay. They're not to pay 30% income tax and sales tax and gift tax and inheritance tax, and the 20,000 other taxes, income tax. What else? Gains tax, right? All these things, you actually save more money living under Islamic law. So even though you can't openly call people towards your religion, and you can't insult Islam, and you can't randomly insult people, right? We wouldn't allow that under Sharia law. You can't defame people, I guess. In the West, they sue each other if you defame people, and it leads to them losing monetary finances and all that. In Islam, we don't let people insult other people and whatnot, and this is just harmful speech, right? And then we're not talking about like complaining, right? We're talking about people who spread rumors, right? We wouldn't let a false rumor spread, is what I'm saying. So free speech is limited. You can say pretty much 99% of the things you want to say, right, under Sharia law, but that 1% we would not allow that under our laws. Then the next point is gender equality. In Islam, we don't believe in gender equality. We believe in gender equity. Um, and there's a verse in the Quran where Allah says that He created one gender in a higher degree over the other in terms of strength and authority, right? So the male sex is stronger than the female sex. Automatically, they're not expected to do the same things. Under Islam, the women wouldn't be able to hold political positions of leadership. They wouldn't be able to lead the prayer in congregation, right? Those are because Allah says in verse 434, men are the maintainers of women. So, but also women get special rights as well, right? They get to be financially supported. The man has to pay for their medical stuff, their food, their clothes, their housing, and et cetera, right? Reasonably. And also the women are not obligated to fight in wars, right? Like in the Middle East right now, where like in Palestine right now, all the men, unless they have an excuse like blindness or they can't walk or something, or they have a position that can't be replaced, like doctors, for example, they are obligated to fight, and those who don't are committing a huge sin. Women are exempt from that. And we're not saying that women should just let the enemy abuse them. No, if they're in a position where they can defend themselves, they have to do that. But we're talking about confronting the enemy on the battlefield. Women are exempt from that. Men have to do that, right? So, and women get a mahar gift for marriage, right? It could be like a property. It could be $50,000. Who knows, right? In the Sahaba's time period, they used to offer gardens, which would generate money for these women. And there's no marriage without a mahar gift to the woman. So, and the other way around now, what are the responsibilities of women to men? The good wife obeys her husband. Every single even in the West, we all know that no man wants an aggressive, masculine woman that calls the shots. All women generally want someone to provide, protect them, and someone they can listen to and submit to, right? And these are how the longest relationships last. Equality marriages don't last. I've never seen it work. Can't have two alphas in the house. So actually equality is a bad thing because you're putting expectations on each gender that they can't handle. Equity is better. And an example of this would be, let's say you have like a 7-foot tall guy. Let's say you're at a baseball game and there's a big rail and there's a 7-foot guy, there's a 4'5" guy, and let's say there's a 5-foot guy. And let's say the railing is 5 feet long, right? So the 4.5 foot guy can't see above it. The 7-foot guy can see above it, and the 5.5 foot guy can barely see above it. And let's say we have to be equal with all these people, right? So let's give them a stool to step on. Each of them will have a 0.5 foot stool to step on, and we're going to give it to all three of them. And there's other people, let's say there's other people who are like, 4 foot tall, whatever, and they can't see, but they need stools as well. Instead of, giving it to the 7-foot guy, why don't we give it to these other people that actually need it? Well, under equality, that 7-foot guy would get it if he got there first, right? So equity, I know it's like not really a good example, but it's hard to explain. But basically, equality puts expectations on one gender that they can't handle, and you see it all the time when you see women trying to fight men in sports, or when men are in women's sports, right? They have an unfair advantage. This is what equality does. And in Islam, we don't deal with that. Equity is better than equality. And then secular law, no, obviously I mentioned Sharia law is the only law Muslims believe in. We tolerate other laws if we're living in those countries. We abide by them. But in our lands, we demand the establishment of Islamic law because it's the best law. And there's no other law better than it. So, let me tell you about secular law. I did another video on this. But basically, under secular law, you're separating the religion in the state, right? So you have godless people ruling the country, and the country becomes less God-fearing because of that. It's like an atheist system. And when you have people in leadership who don't have anyone else above them to answer to, who are godless, they don't believe they're being held accountable by God, and they're not, the best believers in the land or whatever, they become corrupt. And that's why every single democracy in the world is corrupt. And you could look, and the argument is, well, what about those Muslim lands? There's a lot of corrupt people there. Well, those Muslim lands aren't ruling by Sharia law. They're ruling by democracy and these secular systems, right? So another backdrop to secularism is that, like, a democracy, we'll use democracy as an example. It can be infiltrated, right? Like the Jews infiltrated the American government, and they use it against the interests of its own people to support foreign country, right? They use our military to fight their wars. They use the money, the billions of dollars, they send it abroad, and then like a mafia, they take some of that money and send it to their foreign lobbying group called AIPAC, which funds our politicians. So there's a lot of corruption there. And under secularism, you pay all these taxes, like, dozens and dozens, all the money you save, you can't even save up because you're basically a debt slave under a secular government. Like America, for example, you have to pay tons of taxes. Like half your money probably goes to taxes, and then not counting the usury that you have to deal with, right? Under Islamic law, we ban usury and insurance and interest payments, right? Like student loan interest and mortgages, that would be outlawed. All those things make everything unaffordable. Mortgages made houses unaffordable. Student loans made education unaffordable. Insurance made medical care unaffordable and dental care unaffordable. And all this stuff that you're paying, all those things are banned in an Islamic country. You actually only pay two taxes under Islamic law: a land tax, not a property tax, right? Property tax is tied to its value. So some people, as you're noticing, these houses are getting more and more valuable because of mortgage and because they're not building any more houses and because of corruption. The property tax you have to pay, even if you own it, will increase. It's like you're paying a subscription on your house. And if you can't pay it, then they take it. So do you really own that house? No. And so the land tax in Islam, it's by, like acre, for example, and it's just determined by how many acres you own, for example, and that stops some billionaire from buying up all the land in the country, right? And then there's the other tax, the jizya tax or zakat tax. Muslims pay the zakat tax and non-Muslims pay the jizya tax. The zakat tax is 2.5% of all wealth. And then the jizya tax can be fixed to whatever it is that the non-Muslims are averaging fairly, obviously. And there's exemptions, like if the non-Muslim is serving in the Muslim army, then they don't have to pay the jizya tax, because that jizya tax is a payment for us defending them, basically, so that they can benefit off our lands. And, if they can't pay the jizya tax because they can't afford it, then they would be exempted. So, and then, the courts, right? The secular courts, it takes years and years and years for some kind of court case to finish, right? And you have to pay lawyers tens of thousands of dollars to get justice. And in an Islamic system, if there's evidence, then it's brought forth to a judge, and then he determines what the punishment is, or if you get to be set free, all on the same day, one day. That's it. You don't have to, one day you come here, okay, next court case is 3 months from now, and then now you got to do that. Can't leave the country. Kind of like what you're seeing with the Tates right now, right? They're stuck in a limbo right now. Like they haven't seen a court or a trial yet. They've been stuck with this court case for, I think, 3 years now. This time it's not something we have to deal with under Islamic law. It's if two people have a dispute, they take it to the judge, and he determines who's right or wrong. And it's not based on his opinion like in the West. It's based on Islam. Islam determines who's right and wrong, and the judge rules by Islamic law, what Islam says. So Islam is the mediating factor that secular law misses, right? And then under secular law marriages, they make it so hard, right? Like if a woman divorces a man and he has a lot of money, she can take half his stuff, right? Or vice versa, right? I've seen men take half of a woman's wealth that she earned. Under Islam, the man's money is his and the woman's money is hers. And you don't have to pay all these fees and lawyers to get divorced. No, it's very simple. Under Islamic law, a woman can divorce via khula, where she returns the mahar, or a man can divorce via talaq. Very simple. Everything in Islam basically just makes everything simple. That's what Sharia law does. So, and there's a lot of other things like this. I made a big video about this already. But basically, Islamic law is superior in every single way to secular law. So that's pretty much it. Assalamu alaikum.